And here with more reaction to the latest in the Mueller probe and the new information emerging about Bruce Ohr's connection to the Steele dossier, Congressman Darrell Issa, who joins me now. All right, good evening, Congressman. Look, if anybody has the background to talk about Bruce Ohr, it's the former chairman of Government Oversight and Reform. You were a pit bull when you were there. Tell me what strikes you as interesting in the Bruce Ohr, Nellie Ohr case.
You know, what really strikes us as interesting is not, obviously, the conflict of interest that Bruce Ohr had with his wife working for what essentially was an arm of the Democratic National Committee that created this fake dossier that conspired, if you will, with people, including a former British agent, but who knows how the Russian connection goes there. That would bother us enough. What really bothers us is the direct communications, the text that in the deposition, we're going to be asking him how in the world an attorney, not a high-ranking attorney at the Department of Justice, but any attorney could not disclose those communications and the conflict of interest that he had while doing his job. That's an ethical question that any lawyer out there listening would say, yeah, you just don't do that. You don't represent one client when you've got conflicts and not disclose them.
Okay, and you know, what's interesting is we had that Andrew McCabe also fired where, you know, he was getting money from a Clinton Foundation supporter, that Terry McAuliffe, for his wife. Right. And, you know, it just goes on. It's just shocking how outrageous this is. But I want to read something here in the communications that we found out about. Just wondering if you had any news. This is from Christopher Steele to Bruce Ohr as to whether or not the firewalls will hold. He's kind of worried about the fact it appears that he might be outed here. And then Bruce Ohr says at some point, very concerned about Comey's firing, afraid they will be exposed. What does all this tell you?
Well, these are the questions we'll be asking behind closed doors, but for a darn good reason. We expect that Bruce Ohr has to tell us basically why he was in this dialogue, why he was, if you will, conspiring with somebody that was hidden. His role and the fake dossier and so on was hidden from the public and hidden from a judge. You know, Washington has an awful lot of people that are married to other people and conflicts occur. We understand that, but he didn't disclose those. And then obviously the Christopher Steele direct communication, where it appears a little bit, if you will, like Strzok, where they're basically saying, where's the insurance policy? I thought we'd remain secretive. Well, you know, the secret is out. The secret is the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton are the only ones that had a conspiracy, and it was a conspiracy to create fake evidence that led to spying on the president's campaign. That's really what happened and what's being covered up in the Mueller investigation today, because Mueller has a specific set of instructions. Don't go over to the other side. Don't look at that part of the conspiracy. Only look at the Trump part.
It is really amazing. Congressman Darrell Issa, thank you for being on this evening.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, and coming up, former CIA Director John Brennan stripped of his security clearances. Should others be next in line? Tom Fitton is standing by with the latest. Plus, street justice is back, and you don't want to miss this one. I take on Governor Cuomo's anti-American comments.
Why would someone who's a governor of a state talk like that?
It's disgusting. It's embarrassing.
A frenzied response continues from the mainstream media and others after the president rightfully stripped Obama's ex-CIA chief John Brennan of his security clearances. So, will the White House revoke more? And who might be next? Here with a reaction to it all, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton, who joins me now. All right, you know, Tom, before I even get to this question of the security clearances, look, you are the one, and I always give you credit because it just amazes me. But for you, we wouldn't know half the stuff we're finding out about. And you could actually write a novel, a mystery novel. No one would believe it, with all facts from evidence that you've gotten. So now we find out that Bruce Orr, his wife's being paid by the group that got money from Hillary Clinton, and he's trying to back channel this guy fired by the FBI who did the dossier. I mean, it's just incestuous dirt. So, how are you getting this information, and what do you expect to go for next?
Well, it's interesting. We have 3 lawsuits for Bruce Orr materials pending in federal court. Next week, we have a court hearing. One judge yelled at the Justice Department for not moving on our FOIA request. They've been sitting on it since December about Bruce Orr. We have a production of documents due at the end of next week. So we could be getting more information on Bruce Orr as soon as next week over the objections of the Justice Department and with the help of a federal court judge who's yelling at the Justice Department to get their act together and start producing and searching for records.
You know what doesn't make sense to me, Tom? I mean, there is something called the Freedom of Information Act, all right? And every time you ask for something, it seems to me that it gets to the core of this Russia collusion, teed up, framed investigation, Donald Trump being framed, that they say, no, no, no. At some point, somebody's got to say, they keep saying no, 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 so maybe they're corrupt too.
Well, the Justice Department and FBI have been covering up for this gang for over a year at least. You know, this Bruce Orr material, DOJ's known about it since at least December, you can bet. And it's a regular patent place over at the Justice Department. You got Bruce Orr with his wife working at Fusion GPS. You had the affair between Page and Peter Strzok. And so you've got these marital and adulterous conflicts of interest that have absolutely compromised the Russia investigation. It's just extraordinary. Talk about a novel. And it shows you why the Mueller team is so loath to allow the release of information about what went on here. Because this stonewalling isn't about the DOJ. It's about protecting Mueller and allowing his harassing investigation, again, harassing investigation of the Trump presidency to continue.
You know, in the New York Times article from today, it looks like someone's panicking, Tom, I got to tell you. You know, trying to make it look to Don McGahn like Donald Trump is framing you. He's teeing you up for the fall. Something's going on here. But let me just ask you this. No. Do we know how the dossier got from Steele to the FBI?
It looks like it went through Bruce Orr. It looks like it also may have come through the State Department through people like Sidney Blumenthal and that gang. The dossier in many ways has 1,000 fathers, all of whom associated with the Clinton campaign. You can't, and of course Mueller is relying on the dossier as part of his investigation. So the Justice Department is on the side of the dossier and its authors, as opposed to the rule of law and the conspiratorial and the conspiracy theorists who are pushing it. All
right. Now, you just said a name that just something went off in my head. You're talking about Sidney Blumenthal. It reminds me there was another Clinton person who had a security clearance who stuffed secrets in his socks. Who was that?
Oh, that was Sandy Berger.
Sandy Berger. So let me ask you this, because we got like 15 seconds left. And in the next block, I'm going to talk about security clearances. Should any of these bozos who've been fired still have their security clearances? And what's taking so long?
It's the deep state. There's this corrupt attitude that people can maintain their security clearances even after they don't need them. Not only should Brennan, but everyone who loses their job or ends their job at the federal government should lose their security clearances. And this group that gets courtesy security clearances, it's at odds with the public interest and our national security.
All right. Tom Fitton, thanks for what you do. Keep us in the loop on what you find out.
You're welcome. Thanks for mentioning Sandy Berger. He's a good example of why we should cut security clearances off.
Thank you. All right. Coming up, a GoFundMe account for Peter Strzok. And that's just the tip of the iceberg in this week's outrageous comments. But first, ex-CIA Chief John Brennan still trashing the president. Find out what my all-star panel has to say on this subject and much more next.
Live from America's news headquarters, I'm Robert Gray. President Trump demanding an investigation of Christopher Steele. Now, he's the former British spy hired by Fusion GPS to investigate suspected ties between Russia and the Trump campaign. And the White House says the president is prepared to revoke the security clearances of more current and former intelligence officers after yanking former CIA Director John Brennan's security clearance. Critics say it's an escalating attack against those who have criticized Mr. Trump or played a role in the Russia probe. Today marks a month, meanwhile, since the disappearance of Molly Tibbetts. The 20-year-old vanished from the Brooklyn, Iowa area after going for a jog. Her father says a website set up by law enforcement that went online Monday has already generated 200 new leads. I'm Robert Gray. Now back to the judge.
Obama's ex-CIA chief John Brennan at it again last night, trashing the president. Take a listen.
The fact that he's using a security clearance of a former CIA director as a pawn in his public relations strategy, I think is just so reflective of somebody who, quite frankly, I don't want to use this term maybe, but he's drunk on power. He really is. And I think he's abusing the powers of that office.
Does that guy live in Crazyville? Anyway, here to weigh in on that and much more, NRA TV contributor and author of the new book, Spygate, the attempted sabotage of Donald J. Trump, Dan Bongino, and former aide to Chuck Schumer, radio show host Chris Hahn. All right. Okay, Chris, I'm going to start with you. Let's make one thing clear. You don't have the right to have a security clearance, nor are you entitled to leave with a security clearance. A president has an obligation to make sure that he protects classified information, and so to me, it seems that security clearance should be granted to further the national interest. So I get the sense that you would probably say, so what, John Brennan should keep his.
You know, everything you just said is true.
Oh,
the problem here is that the president is using his office to exact retribution on people who disagree with him publicly. And this was something he could do unilaterally. He said as much. And he did it. And he did it, one, to retaliate, and two, to change the news cycle away from the Omarosa topic that had been bothering him all week. So he did this for reasons that are unpresidential, un-American. We in America do not take retribution against our political opponents. And what the president did to John Brennan, what he's threatening to do to other people, is wrong. If you want to take away security clearances, there is a process to do that is done in a non-political way. And the president should employ those processes if he wants to see these people, if people lose their security clearances in the future.
Yeah, well, as usual, you know, Chris doesn't know what he's talking about. He has to make it personal. It's about Omarosa. Chris has, let's be clear about this, Chris has absolutely zero evidence, zero, that this has anything to do with Omarosa. He just said that because it sounded good, and he figured he could take a cheap shot at the president. Let's be clear about what John Brennan's role was in the Spygate debacle and why this man was a disgrace to the intelligence community and hold a security clearance. This guy should be under federal investigation if he isn't already. Judge, he's the one who briefs Harry Reid and the Gang of Eight. No, whoa, wow is wrong. There's more. Don't say wow yet. I'm not even done. There's more wow. He briefs Harry Reid at the end of August. Harry Reid then goes and writes a letter to the FBI. Information in that letter, Judge, was only in the dossier. Was John Brennan, the CIA director, not supposed to be spying on innocent American citizens? Was he the purveyor of this fake dossier? This guy should be under investigation. You know, forget about a security.
Hey, Chris, how about the fact that Brennan, hang on, Chris, Brennan lied before Senate Intel. If only for that he should be charged of perjury.
Well, then there's a process to get rid of his security clearance, which the president did not employ. He chose to do it for spite.
How do you know?
Said,
what do you have,
John
a thermometer?
Brennan is a man.
Put it in.
John Brennan is a man who oversaw the mission that killed Osama bin Laden and served his country in all sorts of matters in national security for over 50 years. The president, who had 5 deferments from Vietnam, should not be pulling security clearances away from national heroes
would you stick to
like
the
Mr.
topic,
Brennan.
Chris? Let me ask you this. If John Brennan, and by the way, you can read about this in my book, guys, if you haven't bought it. In terms of the swamp, this guy's pond scum. I describe him in the book if you want to know anything about him. But go ahead, Dan.
Chris, this is also a guy. You know, I love how they do this. Listen, great. John Brennan served the country. I was a Secret Service agent too, Chris. You could take a. You know, I'm not asking you for a pat on the back. The taxpayers paid me well to do it. Great.
He did not. Trouble Neil did.
No, John. Listen, John Brennan, I assure you, did not kill Osama bin Laden. I don't know if you missed the story. You may want to go read up on that. But John Brennan did not kill Osama bin Laden. John Brennan is also the guy who was instrumental in the violation of Donald Trump's Fourth Amendment rights. John Brennan is also the guy who was deeply embedded in the spying scandal up on the Hill for the Iran deal. We're supposed to gloss that over? You know, this is the same defense given to Bob Mueller, despite the obvious evidence that this case is a witch hunt. Well, he served the country. Great, and I honor him for that. But that doesn't mean that we look over malfeasance or misfeasance when it presents itself like you're doing.
You know, I just want to say this. I hear you. Okay, and the president has the right, but these are the kind of actions that get people who even like the president worried about the president, and November is coming. And these are the kind of things that are going to be on voters' minds when they make a choice in November. They're going to want to check on a president who they don't trust.
Should Bruce Orr have his security clearances vacated? Chris?
I think that there's a process to determine.
I know there's a process. What do you think? I'm not asking you for the process. You're here for your state of mind. What do you think? Yes or no?
I think that I think he probably should keep his security clearance unless the process finds otherwise.
I got a better one for you, Dan. Hang on. Should Hillary Clinton, who exposed all our classified information on her personal server that was like an open orchid to the hacker Guccifer, should she keep her security clearance? And why isn't she on the list to lose it?
Should the president who uses a non-secure cell phone keep his security clearances? That's what we need to wind up asking right now. These are the kind of things, you know, if we're going to go down that road, let's go down it. Let's figure it out.
Dan, you got 25 seconds.
He can't answer the question ever. Bruce Orr, Judge, let's be crystal clear. The number 4 ranking official in the Justice Department used the source, the FBI themselves. This is a quote. Chris just doesn't know the facts. I'm sorry. The FBI themselves deemed not suitable for use. He brought, you don't know, and he brought him right in the back door and took a source the FBI had already discounted.
And let's be clear, you know, I've been hearing all this about the dossier and about Steele. Can we just remember that it's a Republican that started this, and I want to know who?
He doesn't. Chris does not know the facts, Judge, and he gets away with this every time.
I do.
I know the
facts.
Google.
Stop.
No, wait.
I know the facts.
I'll tell you what you're going to do.
Facts.
Next week, you're both coming on set. We can duke it out. How's that?
He's making this up.
We'll figure it out.
Google Christopher Steele, quote, not suitable for use. Watch how wrong this guy is.
All
Google.
right, guys. Dan Bongino,
the
Chris
Washington Free Beacon, which Republican candidate started the dossier? That's what we got to find out in a hearing, and I hope that comes out right in time for the election.
Candidate.
And thank you, gentlemen.